Hi, I'm Tricia from Club Scrap, and today I'm excited to show you a trio of techniques that will help add some pizzazz and excitement to your layouts and cards. Grab a needle and thread, and let's get stitching. Now I promised you a trio of techniques, so the first one I'm going to show you is this really sweet little applique that acts as a beautiful cover for my handmade journal. So let me start by showing you how this works. I'm using a stamp and stitch set from Timeless Touches, and I'm starting with the Forest collection. And it's a set of acrylic stamps I'm mounted on this really sturdy index sheet. And it goes into the binder. It has the holes right here. And so we'll start out by stamping our leaf image that was shown on the cover. I'll peel off the protective coating and grab my rubber stamp. And then I need a way to actually hold the stamp, so I'm going to be using this acrylic block. It has a grid on the block, so it helps me keep the stamp in a perfect alignment to my paper when I go to stamp. I have some brown ink, so I'll ink my stamp. And since it's acrylic, you can see right through exactly where I'm placing it on the center of my paper. And I have a perfect image. The next thing I'm going to do is stamp on a piece of cotton fabric that I've cut out of an inexpensive painter's cloth. So I've inked with that same shade of brown ink, and then I'll place this image onto the cotton fiber, pressing really firmly so that it makes good contact with the fabric. And when I pull it up, I have another image of the leaf. Now what I'm going to do next is actually pierce some holes into that leaf so I can add my stitches. And I'm using the corresponding forest template here from Timeless Touches. And what I will do is line up the clear template that will help me line up the image to the stamp perfectly. And then I'll use my needle tool to pierce the stitching holes. Now beneath this project, I have my surface protected with a great big piece, 12-inch piece of cork from Timeless Touches. And that really helps a lot when you're working with larger projects, doing borders around an entire 12 by 12 paper. I just love having this cork beneath my work surface, keeping it safe, and then I don't have to worry about piercing through to my table underneath. All right, once you get that all pierced through, you want to apply some adhesive around this leaf image, and you're going to see why in a second. Here I have the adhesive in place, and I will lay my stamped fabric right on top of the stamped image. And they'll line up as perfectly as I can make that happen. And I'm actually going to use my pre-pierced stitching holes now to help me stitch the leaf and the fabric into place. I need to get some fiber, and I'm also going to be using a threading tool to help me get this fiber onto my needle. So what we're going to do is first put our threading tool through the eye of the needle. Then I'm going to make a loop with my thread around that little hook, and then bring it through the eye. And voila! Didn't even need my reading glasses for that one. Now this is sort of attached right here, and what I'll do is from the back side, find that stitching hole, and bring it to the front and make a slight adjustment if needed, so that the first stitch lands right in alignment with the stem of our leaf. And then what you want to do is save a little bit of a tail. Just take some tape and tape the tail into place. And then next, this is probably the most difficult hole to find. You'll just kind of feel around for it, and there it is. I'll go right through that hole, and then back up to the next one. And once you do that, the rest is easy because you'll be doing a simple back stitch, going back down through the previous hole where your fiber just came through before, and then looking at the back of the card to find your next hole. And I'm working with a piece of Club Scraps paper, and all of Club Scraps paper is very, very heavy, so this makes a really nice foundation for these stitching projects. Well, let me show you how that looks on the finished journal. Here's my stamped brown leaf all stitched into place, and then I've unraveled some of the perimeter of that cotton fabric, trimmed my background paper and inked the edges with the same ink I used for the stamp, and then matted it with some handmade paper. Now I love the journal itself, and I really want to take a few moments to show you how I assembled the journal. I took a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper from Club Scrap's 51 Flavors paper collection. It's a sampling of 5 sheets each of all of our plain papers. And I scored it down the center and also almost an inch out from that center score line on both sides, because the journal needs to be able to open and close easily. And then I was noticing that on these templates, there's this sweet little set of 4 holes that store in the binder, but I thought this would be a great template for my piercing holes for my journal. So I'll take a cutting mat and also a ruler, and the ruler will help me find the center of my paper. So that is at 4 1/4 inches on both sides. The center of my template also, which happens to be 2 3/4 inches on each side. And now I know everything is centered up. And what I will do is place all of this on top of a cutting mat. That's very important. You don't want to damage that awesome corkboard beneath. And I'm just going to be using a screw punch to open up the holes in those 4 areas. All right, now that I have those holes pierced, I have what I need for my book cover, but I also want to add a decorative element to my paper. And for that, enter the leaf image once again. First, I will protect the work surface, and I'm going to show you a different technique for stamping that works really well. I'm going to stamp it on my scratch paper and then onto my project. It's going to be a little bit of a softer look, and you can do that on the entire cover before you assemble it. So here's my finished stamped cover. Just again, that very subtle, soft, leafy background with that same image I'm using in the foreground. Now, you might want to know how I attached everything with that sweet little stick that I found in my backyard. All you do is attach the stick with some household jute fiber, and your journal will be complete. Just thread it right through the holes and then add your element on the front of the book. And I love how it turned out. Again, you can see that subtle background right here, and then the stick binding that was very, very easy to do. No special skills were necessary for that. All right, on to my next project. Let me just take a second and I'll tidy up my work area. So this time I'm using an image from the Critters Stamp and Stitch set, and I'll be working with the dragonfly. Once again, I'll take that dragonfly and center it onto my acrylic block. Put that in place right there. And then this time I'm working with a sheet of 3 by 12 inch translucent paper. Now it may look somewhat opaque here, but really you'll be able to see through it in a little bit. I also need to center this image on my page, so I'll use my 0 center again, 6 and 6 on each side. There's my 0 center. I'll ink the stamp. I'm using some green ink. The mount itself is 4 inches wide, so when I stamp it, I'll make sure I'm at 2 and 2 in the center. And a beautiful dragonfly. And I thought it really was pretty, but we can add a little something extra special. This organza ribbon sort of does look like the wing of a dragonfly. So I'll tape a little length of this organza ribbon right in place and stretch it over. Now you'll notice that the organza does not extend to the tail of the dragonfly, and that's okay, don't worry about that. Next I'll take my stitching template that corresponds with all the images in the Critters set, and I'll lay this template right over the dragonfly image. And I'll take my piercing tool and pierce through the organza and also right through the paper. Now, this doesn't look like much right now, but what you need to do is just simply thread some fiber onto a needle, just like I showed you earlier, and then stitch with some matching fiber all around the wings of the dragonfly, following the pierced pattern. And this is the result that you get. Now, I've removed the tape here, and all you need to do next is take a detail scissors and just trim along the edge of the dragonfly wings. Now that your dragonfly wings are all trimmed out, you can see how beautiful that organza looks. It's a really special effect. This is for something you're going to be very pleased with. And what I've done here is to taken the same dragonfly, the same ink color, and stamped it on a strip of the same exact paper. And I will layer that right on top, and because it's translucent, it will reveal this extremely subtle, beautiful background. Now, when you attach this to your layout, it's going to be gorgeous. And this layout was created, again, with papers from Club Scrap's 51 Flavors collection. So these are just wonderful plain papers that can be used for many different things. The translucent here is beautiful. And